I am.
Thank you. Good. Just making sure.
Welcome to Licensing Subcommittee. Can I just start off with the protocol for the remote hearing? Only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communication by the chair. Will everyone please ensure that their mics are muted when they are not speaking, apart from the chair? If you are having any technical difficulties, please use the chat function in the Google Meet to alert the meeting. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. Applicants and all parties will be asked to leave the proceedings after their item has concluded. Please do so promptly so that councillors will have the opportunity to deliberate and make a decision on each application they have heard. Each party will be notified of the decision within 5 working days. If we can start off with the first item on the agenda, can we elect a chair, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Bell, please, if I may.
Thank you very much, Councillor Root. We have apologies for absence from Councillor Peter Snell, who can't be with us today, unfortunately. We will proceed without him. Any declarations of interest, Penny? No.
Do you know, I've just thought of something which has only just occurred to me. I don't think it's a particular declaration, but I probably should say that I am currently the acting chair of trustees for Shoreditch Town Hall, which is just around the corner from Shoreditch High Street. I don't see any reason why this should have any particular impact on what we're doing today, but it's better to have it out in the open, I think.
Thank you. We'll note that in minutes. As I say, I don't think it precludes you from taking part today. The hearing procedure, if you've got a paper copy of the agenda, will be contained within it, but is our standard hearing procedure on these occasions. So after introductions, the licensing officer will briefly outline the case before us. Then it'll be over to the applicant to make their case. Then we hear from any responsible authorities. So in this case, we have the police and the licensing authority making representations. And then we move over to other persons, and I think I have 3 other persons registered to speak at the moment. Each of those is asked to contain their remarks to about 5 minutes. We will be flexible, particularly other persons, but please don't go on for much longer than that. At step 6, there will be discussion between all the parties, and we may suggest amendments or changes to the hours and conditions, for example, might satisfy one party or the other. And at step 7, I'll invite you to make closing remarks at the same order as with initial remarks, and then you'll be invited to leave us and we'll deliberate, make our decision, and we'll try to get that out to you within 5 working days at the longest. And you may get notification before that if you urgently contact us, and we can try to. I think that's the procedure outlined. The people I'm expecting to hear from today. So obviously I'm sitting together with Councillor Penny Root. Our advisor is Mandan Nouth, and Rabia Katyun, our committee officer. And Suba will be presenting for licensing in terms of the details of the case. I think we have Kerry Ryan from the police and David Chewett from the Licensing Service and Path Responsible Authorities. Down to speak, if called for the applicant, I've got Asita Ranatonga leading the case, got Marcus Lavelle, Nick Pring, as you advised, Pete Mortimer, is he here? Yeah. And Simon Gamble, and Guy Hicks if he's called. The objectors I know are speaking, are being told to speaking of Frank McGoldrick. Is he here? I can't, yes I can, Mr. Goldrick, you're there? Alexis Frahimis, I can see you. And Stephen Hayward, sorry. Is he with us? No, not at the moment. Well, if he joins before the appropriate item, he can make his remarks to us. I think that's all the procedural points. Amanda?
Chair, I just noted that I think Kerry Ryan has not yet arrived. Is that correct? Suba, can you see? I can't see her in the list. I know you can't see everybody on the screen, but
I'm here.
Oh, you're here.
I'm here.
Okay, there you are. Okay,
You're coming up as Hackney Licensing for some reason.
Okay, all right. As long as you're here, that's the main thing. I was just making sure. That was all. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
You proceed on. Thank you.
So I think it's because you come up Hackney Licensing, we thought that was our licensing service, but it's police.
Yes,
Hackney
just
Licensing.
making sure everyone was present.
That's all. Great. So with that, Suba, could you please introduce the case?
Thank you, Chair. Licensing service are a receipt of an application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Bar Kick 127 Shoreditch High Street for the activities as stated in the agenda. Since the draft of the report, the applicant has provided additional submission in which they have reduced the hours, amended and proposed new conditions. And this document has been circulated. Even the police have tried to submit an additional video evidence, but due to technical issue, we are not able to forward it, which the police will present as part of their presentation. So right now, only licensing, police and other person representation remains. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Ranatonga, before you proceed, could you clarify one point for me, which is your additional bundle referred to a terminal hour. Is that terminal hour for service of alcohol or terminal hour for closing the premises?
So I'm grateful. It's a terminal hour for licensable activities plus then a half an hour for dispersal. So opening would be half an hour after those times in paragraph 3 of Guy Hicks' report.
Okay, other than that, do you want to present your case, please?
Thank you, sir. And in terms of the starting point, your policy, I know you'll know it, but at paragraph 1.12 refers to Hackney being a vibrant mix of entertainment and leisure activities, which is attractive and is an example of how diverse attractions can coexist and complement one another, bringing about choice. This application is for a new premises license, which we say will fit within and be consistent with your policy. Essentially, it will secure the future of Bar Kick. There is an existing license, but we're applying for a new license because we have a new operator, and it will create jobs. No one knows what the future holds post-COVID, but it is fair to say that the licensing trade has been hit hard and some would say decimated by COVID. Both of those points about securing the future of the premises and creating jobs are relevant to this application and sit behind it. Now, in terms of the hours, I'm grateful that I've clarified what they are. I'll come back to that in a minute, but really the point there is we have heard what is said and we want that to be absolutely plain. We've heard what the responsible authorities have said and what residents have said, and to that extent have cut back the hours that we were originally seeking. Originally we were seeking, as you will have seen, alcohol 2:30 Monday to Saturday and 3 o'clock closing. Well, we've cut back, as I've just outlined, in response to the concerns that have been raised. There's a couple of minor tweaks that I do need to make in relation to that. Page 22 of the applicant's bundles, that's the additional papers which we submitted. I do wish to be clear about this, and I can come back to it as necessary because I know I'm time limited on this. But condition 30 refers to the 4 SIA door staff, Thursday to Saturday. Well, in light of the cutback in hours, the way this came about is we were offering up these conditions and then actually decided to cut back the hours, and there needs to be a couple of tweaks here. Condition 30, it won't be proportionate and really feasible for us to offer the 4 SIAs on a Thursday, given the number of people we're expecting, which is reduced on a Thursday. And therefore, I would seek to remove Thursday from condition 30. And then the other point is condition 32, which is the last entry, which says no entry or re-entry to the premises after midnight. Well, that would be after midnight Monday to Thursday, but after midnight 30 on Fridays and Saturdays. Midnight 30, you'll be familiar, you and your colleagues on the committee, that the current license allows for midnight 40 for alcohol on a Friday and Saturday with 1 o'clock close. We're seeking to better that on a Friday and Saturday with a last entry of midnight 30. So that's the other amendment I'd make, amendments to condition 30 and condition 32. The point being for last entry, just to note, is that it's no worse, we say, in terms of last entry and people having access to the premises than what currently exists. In fact, on a Friday and Saturday, it is better. Now, at this stage, I do just briefly want to bring in, firstly, Nick Pring, who's the owner-operator of Urban Pubs and Bars Limited, and then the premises manager, Simon Gamble. At this stage, I'll just note Peter Mortimer, who's the DPS as listed, is also on this call and available to answer questions, but given the time we've got, I'm going to ask Nick Pring first, just to give us a few headlines as to the investment into the premises, but also Urban Pubs and Bars, please.
Thank you, Asifa. So just a little bit about myself, my business partner. We've been in the business for 25 years. I started in a corporate role with Bass and then with Whitbreads. And in 2002, myself and my business partner, we set up a company called Real Pubs. And Real Pubs was the first gastropub multiple in London. Very successful company. As the name would suggest, we were majoring really on food. We sold that business to Green King in 2011. And then Malc and I, we started a new business, which is Urban Pubs and Bars, which is with the applicants, in 2013. We run all sorts of different venues all across London. We have some high-end restaurants in Soho. We have gastropubs, which is a reflection of our old business. We have some city bars. We have a couple of late-night venues as well. But I guess the common theme throughout all of those is food is a very important part of what we do in all of those venues. We bought Bar Kick back in January 2020. So unfortunately, shortly after that, obviously COVID occurred. But what we have done during that time is we've invested £650,000 doing a major overhaul of Bar Kick. It's been underinvested for many, many years. And we've basically made it into a better place to come and eat. We put meeting rooms downstairs, and essentially we're after a more premium spend, a better quality of customer in there. And we've done that through the aesthetics of the place and also through pricing.
Okay, thank you, Nick, for that. Can I next just briefly bring in the premises manager, Simon Gamble? I haven't seen anything that refers to a lack of experience or concerns about that, but Simon Gamble we have as the premises manager, Peter Mortimer as the DPS as stated. Simon Gamble, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Grateful. I just want you to help me with the drinks offer and food, but first, before you get to those, your experience generally in licensing and your experience in this area, please.
Okay, as in this industry, I've progressed from a bartender to a general manager in majority of late night led businesses, mix of food and wet. I've been a general manager in a DPS since 2018 in a mixture of sites, some being small capacity 330 up to 760 capacity. The majority have been a 3 AM license, 7 days a week trading. Some have been single license. In Dual Piccadilly, I ran a dual license premises, so we had to run 2 different licenses at the same time. I've run small and large teams, both in terms of in-house staff and also security and SIA. I've run SIA from 3 to 17 members of security in city venues. I've had experience in the West End as well.
Okay, thank you. If I can just come in at this stage, just help me with your experience in the area. I think you were, I understand you worked at Barrio Bar, is that right?
In 2019 and 2020, I was a general manager at Barrio Shoreditch, just down the road. So had a very successful time there as well. No licensing issues.
Okay, and then just moving on, in terms of the drinks offer here, you've talked about the type of clientele. The drinks offer, I've seen reference to premium quality beers, craft beers, etc., as well as a cocktail menu. Do you want to just help us with that and pricing, please?
Yep, so we offer a better product at a higher price to obviously drive bringing in nicer clientele, and that's a premium spirit range and also a premium food range. It's the first time we've had draft in the venue for 20 years as well, so we're more draft-led than we would be bottled. Okay,
and then in terms of food, the committee will have seen on page 24 of our documents the late night food offer. Do you want to just help us with that? It's gourmet burgers, I understand.
Yeah, so it'll be gourmet burgers offered to late night customers. It'll be a reduced menu, but it'll be there available at all trading times to ensure that we still have a dry offer as opposed to just a wet-led venue when we're trading later.
Yeah, and that's up until closing, is that right?
Yeah, so that'll be for the full continuation until closing, and customers need a food offering, a substantial food offering at all times.
All right, thank you. So with that in mind, I'm just going to turn to a few points, if I may, in the remaining time on the SPA, because obviously that's the point that's raised by responsible authorities and residents. If I could just take them in turn. The first point is the nature, so just to deal with that head on, we say we will not add to the cumulative impact issues in the area by the grant of this licence. The burden's on us to demonstrate that, and it's to do with what is currently experienced in the area, which you might say is COVID, but we can look forward beyond COVID as well. And what I say is this, a number of points. Firstly, the operation. The focus of this operation is about table football. We have the table football tables downstairs, which is a diversion from simply upright drinking. You've heard about the drinks offer and the food offer. The food offer I do rely upon is offering substantial hot food to a late hour, which is something that was not there previously, and is also a diversion from simply upright drinking. There's also then the age profile. We're looking for customers between 20 but up to 35, and a corporate type of client, particularly for the basement offer, which can be hired. You will also have seen, councillors, the amount of seating in the premises. There's a lot of seating, is what I would note, which detracts from it being an upright drinking premises. Page 27 and following shows some nice photos of the inside of the premises. So there's the operation, and you'll see one of the conditions, which is not to have any DJ-led events. It's not a music-led venue. It's not upright drinking. As such, there's more seating offered, and there's an age profile and type of client, which is reflected in the quality of the drinks and food offer. Secondly, I'd want to note that we've cut back our hours, and I've explained what they are, reduced them in response to the concerns raised by responsible authorities and residents. And we do that as part of a partnership approach. And we say that is in part in response to the issues that have been raised. Thirdly, previously the premises as operating did not have any significant issues with regards to crime and disorder and public nuisance, which are the issues that are raised. Now, of course, you'll be aware of your own policy, which says the quality and track record may not be sufficient on its own, but the quality and track record here is something you can take into account, and I ask you to do so. And it is unblemished. If you read the report of Guy Hicks, who was Sergeant Hicks in this area, he's very clear about the unblemished record of these premises, no significant concerns. Fourthly, what do we offer to rebut this concern? A last entry condition, which I've outlined and should lead to a gradual dispersal of people within the premises. The numbers can only go down from those hours which I've set out, and that is a point which rebuts the presumption in my submission. Fifthly, the basement, the use of the basement will stop at 1 o'clock when the premises is open. Beyond that, that too supports a gradual dispersal of people from the premises. The sixth point I'd wish to make is to refer you to the late night food offer and the hot food that's there. What that is specifically relevant to in the Shoreditch and Dalston SPA, Shoreditch in particular, is people leaving premises and going to takeaway venues, and the litter that leads to, the people being outside, the nuisance that might give rise to. Well, we hope to keep people within the premises and to have them gradually disperse out of the area, which is why we have that late night food offer and a quality late night food offer. The next point, the seventh point, is the SIA. So previously there was no specification as to the number of SIA. Hopefully you'll have seen condition 30 that we're offering is to have 4 SIA at the premises beyond 9 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays. That will be 2 inside and 2 outside. And what that means in practice is a presence, because they will be, you'll have seen the policy, a presence with people in uniform and clear uniform that marks them out, both inside and outside the premises to regulate what goes on both inside and outside. So that's the 7th point. The 8th point is the dispersal policy. I hope you'll have seen that on page 8 of our additional papers. It refers, you might say, as you would expect, to a wind down period, monitoring of the front, lighting, any music, and training for door supervisors. But I think if there's one point I'd make in relation to that, you'll see it on page 11, is that after midnight, directing customers to the east and north out of the special policy area, either home on foot or towards public transport where necessary, a specific part of the dispersal policy which seeks to meet the concern about adding to cumulative impact issues.
Mr. Ratonga, can you wind up now, please?
Yes, just 2 brief points if I may then. The 9th point is to look at the evidence in response. Obviously you'll be hearing from residents and the responsible authorities. You won't be hearing from environmental health, who are the experts, you might say, on public nuisance, which is really what most of this is about. It's important to bear that in mind when you hear what people have to say. And then finally, I just reiterate what I said at the outset, which is this is really about securing the future of the premises and creating jobs. We estimate, and Nick Pring is on this call, there'll be an additional 8 jobs created by granting this extended hours. It's a new license book for extended hours. There's the 4 SIA, 2 full-time and 6 part-time jobs in total, so 8 jobs, which is essential in the current climate, in my submission. That's what we'd say at this stage.
Just a couple of clarifications. First of all, in terms of your capacity, reading your own documentation, is it 400 in total, upstairs and downstairs?
It's not. I'll ask Nick Pring or Peter Morton or Simon to come in. But so you'll have picked that up, I think, from the documentation that we provided in support. I've clarified that. I think the fire safety risk assessment that we have is for 220, and that is capacity at full. You'll have seen 400 on page 29, yeah. Which is part of the advertisement that we spell out. We've got 2 premises, I understand. One is about 15 minutes away, and if someone came in for a 400 venue hire, we'd be looking to cross-sell across both premises. The other premises, I think, being significantly bigger. So it's fair to say, you're absolutely right, it's 220 is the fire risk assessment capacity. There's no capacity.
Is that across both floors?
I believe it is.
Across both floors, that's correct, yeah. Yeah.
And so how many in the basement?
There's 110 in the basement, I believe.
So it's half and half?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'll leave all the other points to debate. I've got a few things, but I'll raise them in the debate stage. Councillor Root, do you have anything you want to raise at this stage?
I don't think so. I think I do have a few questions, but I'll wait for later as well.
Okay. Mr. Stewart, do you want to make representations?
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it very brief. So essentially, my representation is on Appendix B2 in today's agenda, and the representation is on the grounds of prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance. So as we've heard, the application is for a new premises licence within the Shoreditch SPA, and this area is identified as suffering from a negative cumulative impact as a result of the saturation and clustering of licensed premises in that area. So we've heard obviously that the premises is already licensed, and so there's no concerns from myself about that, but the concerns do relate to the additional activities that would be authorised if you're minded to grant the licence today in its current form. I've had regard to the additional submission, which is welcomed and was received just this morning. I've had a chance to look at it. It presents some additional information, as we've heard, including a dispersal plan and revised conditions, etc. However, I think this document and the submission from Mr. Hicks actually sort of points to some of the concerns that we have about this area. So this states in paragraph 8 of that document that it's noted a gradual increase in crime in the area, especially violent offences, notably from 2 a.m. and peaking at around 4 a.m. before tapering off, and that's essentially the hours where this premises is seeking to extend its hours of operation to, and those are where we particularly have concerns about. So I did, and I'm sure we'll come to that in the discussion, but the only other thing I would say at this stage is that I mentioned in my representation that the plan submitted with the application appears to include some communal areas of the building, so notably a communal fire exit. So some clarification around that will be helpful, and also part of what appears to be the pavement on Shoreditch High Street. So as things stand, if you were minded to grant this application, from what I can see, the licensable activity will be able to be carried on the street to the early hours of the morning. So that also adds to concerns, but I'm sure that's something that we can clarify in the discussion today. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think you're referring to the plan that came with the application, and as you say, it rightly includes a stretch of pavement down here, and includes a communal fire corridor serving the building here.
Yeah.
And I think we want to clarify those are not, as far as we're concerned, licensable areas.
That's right, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wright, any questions? If not, I'll move on to the police. Kerry, as you representing?
Yes, it's me.
Please go ahead.
Yes, I did submit a document that people weren't able to access. They couldn't access the link on our system. I did ask if I could share my screen and show a short video. Would that be all right?
Please try.
Okay, bear with me. Okay, can everybody see this? Can everybody see the
Yes, we can see
video
it.
back?
We can,
Excellent.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've used this video to try and convey the enormous task that police have every weekend in Shoreditch, and I thought it would be easier to show you than it was me trying to explain to you how it goes. So this video runs over 3 consecutive weekends. It runs from the 23rd of August 2020 until 13th of September 2020. And any timings between 11:30 and 10 to 4 in the morning. So it is worth mentioning that although you see all these crowds on the streets, these were actually during coronavirus restrictions as they were being eased in the summer last year, albeit only for a short time. So we can see that with the sheer volume of people that we have come to expect in Shoreditch at a weekend, and a small example of the violent outbursts that we regularly see. Many of these are fueled by alcohol. So this is the top of Kingston Road here, near the junction with Shoreditch High Street. Just let this run for a short time. So you can see lots of police officers, there's some enforcement officers from the council there too. So this is Rivington Street. Kick is located just at the top of, on Shoreditch High Street, near the top of Rivington Street. And so is in the centre of a lot of these clips. And it's clear to see why police have huge concerns about the extension of hours here, which will put customers who have consumed more alcohol amongst the crowds who are already there, and undoubtedly have a negative impact on the cumulative impact. Plus there's another bar a couple of doors down that's also applied to extend its hours. It was due to be heard today, but that's actually been deferred for a short time. Okay, so the footage shows that these are not single isolated events. The fights, the violence, the disorders happening all the time. And these are just a small amount over 3 weekends that we were able to capture on camera. This says Kingston Road, but it's actually going to be Shoreditch High Street, and it's very near to Kick Bar. And we've seen our colleagues injured. We've seen members of the public sustain nasty injuries, and in some cases rendered unconscious. And too many to count those who are suffering the ill effects of alcohol, who we find collapsed, vomiting, and left extremely vulnerable to opportunistic theft and sexual assaults. And this is one of the reasons that the special policy area was introduced in Shoreditch. You can see the sheer number of police resources that are required to try and control the violence and keep everyone safe and try and ensure that someone's night doesn't turn out to be a tragic event. Okay, I'm going to stop that there. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. Oh, there we go.
Lovely picture.
Okay. So I just had a few questions about KIC itself. What I have concerns about is the basement, that it closes at 1 o'clock. And if there's 110 people in the basement, 110 on the ground floor, and the basement is being closed, where do those additional people go? How are they dispersed? How are they told that they're no longer able to drink in the venue? And then they're pushed out onto the streets, looking for somewhere else to go so they can continue drinking. And also in the conditions, condition 33, off sale should cease at midnight, it says. Obviously, the policy states that should be 2,300 hours. But police do have huge concerns about the extension of hours and what we have to deal with every weekend in Shoreditch, and it's not getting any better. And considering that the video clips that you saw were taken when there were actually restrictions in place, gives us greater concern for what happens when the hospitality industry opens up again fully. And so we do feel that Bar Kick does have sufficient hours at the moment. And that's all from us, unless anyone has any questions for us.
Sorry, Penny, go ahead.
I do have a question, really, which is just about when those pictures were taken. I mean, obviously, they're the middle of August, which is the height of summer. Yeah. And I just wonder how much difference that makes to the number of people who they would expect to see on the street. You know, people are much more likely to hang around in the street when they can do so comfortably in a t-shirt than they are when it's colder for a lot of the rest of the year. And, you know, as you rightly say, it is kind of shocking to see people not social distancing at all during COVID times, but that was quite a short period of time and people went a bit bonkers, didn't they? Almost anticipating that there was going to be another lockdown. So I suppose my question is, you know, how typical are those pictures really?
Those pictures are very typical. I personally have been on duty pretty much every Saturday night well over 18 months almost now. And those are typical. The cold doesn't seem to put people off. The rain doesn't seem to put people off. People want to be going out, drinking in the bars, drinking on the street. And unfortunately, that ends up with violence and disorder on the streets that we have to deal with.
Okay, thank you.
And do I take it that you haven't heard anything substantial from the applicants that would assuage your concerns?
No, we haven't.
Okay, we'll come back to points of detail later, I'm sure. If I can move on to the other persons. Frank Goldrick, do you want to make representations, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Great, thank you. I'm a resident directly above the bar. I've been living here for 3 years. And as you can imagine, my primary concern is one of noise nuisance. I'd also like to note that I'm an architect, so I'm aware of the physical issues relating to noise transmission. And I think this being a very old building, the party wall does transmit noise and vibration from noises. I do appreciate that there was a suggestion to have some noise limitation, but I don't see how that can isolate the source of noise from transmitting through to the rest of the building unless you were just to completely line the bar with an entire layer of acoustic insulation, which I don't think is going to happen. Even just as recently as last week, there was a sports event being shown in the bar downstairs, and I could hear the commentary very clearly in my apartment. And so, you know, on work days, that will become basically unlivable for me. If it goes to hours of 1 o'clock, I will not get enough rest to go to work the next day as in a fit state. I do understand that there is a certain degree of latitude to be expected as a business, and Barkick needs to operate as a business. The weekends can be unbearable. I've had to triple glaze my windows at the front for people out in the street. And again, it's not just Barkick customers, it's everybody's customers. And I would also support the statement that those videos are fairly typical scenes that you would see, especially at the weekends. So obviously my concern is of noise, and if we can retain the hours that were there previously, where the bar used to close at 11 on weekdays, then of course that's fine. Although I would say that I still have noise transmission concerns, but obviously I want to be reasonable in the context of what we're talking about here. That's it, really.
About your aware they're applying to open till 1:30 during the week.
I'm sorry, Brian, could you say that again, please?
You're aware they're now, by this application, they're applying to be open till 1:30 during the week.
Yeah, it's the weekdays I'm primarily concerned about, Monday to Thursday. I believe. Yep.
They're applying to sell alcohol till 1 a.m. and stay open to 1:30 during the week now. Do you want to make any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that will only fuel the addition of noise. And obviously, I understand as the transmission of films and music and so on is also being extended to those hours. And I will be impacted by that, as will the other residents in our building, of course. It is a residential area.
Okay, thank you very much. Alexis, do you want to make your presentation?
Hello, thank you, Chair. I would 100% confirm what my fellow neighbor said. I think I welcome Mr. Prince's investment into Barkick. Welcome to Shoreditch for the further venue. We welcome investment in the neighborhood and in businesses, but I think what needs to be emphasized is the existing problems in the area, and specifically where Barkick is. Mr. Prince's own consultant, the former Sergeant Nick, who I believe is on this call, his own report states categorically that this area has seen an increase in crime in recent years, and particularly the stretch of road where Barkick is on is a particular area of concern. If Mrs. Rout would like to come one evening, any evening, I would love to show her around the neighborhood, on a weekend especially. It has nothing to do with good weather. The problems are consistent throughout the year. And I think it's really gotten to the point where local residents are screaming and shouting at our councillors to please acknowledge what's happening and acknowledge that this is still a residential area. While being mixed, and we welcome that, and we welcome all the investment, this is still a residential area. And living here during the pandemic, when everything was closed or the venues were closed, really emphasized that point to me. I never realized that all the buildings on that strip are actually not office blocks, they're apartment blocks. There are people living upstairs from Barkick. There are people living upstairs next door to Barkick. In fact, across the street from Barkick is Acorn House, a very a wonderful charity that deals with people with addiction problems, and they fix the beautiful garden in Shoreditch Church in front, where unfortunately people leave places like Barkick and urinate in all night. The situation you saw in those pictures, and I thank so much the police for showing that video, we can't really explain it. You can only from those images can you see what happens. The hours specifically are the problem. It's the hours of extension. I understand that Mr. Prick is trying to run a business and he just bought this business and he wants to make it more profitable. But the hours he's extending it into are really the hours that we have a problem with. The dispersal strategy, as he called it, is quite frankly insulting, because as you saw with the crowds on the street, once the people leave the venue, there is no control over them anymore. They will go out and make public nuisance, and the cumulative impact is overwhelming. And I really strongly urge the councillors to acknowledge that this is a neighbourhood where people are trying to live in as well. It's not just a nightclub venue area. And we have to deal with those images every weekend. We have to deal with those images you saw. They are on our doorstep. And it's really it's become overwhelming. I also want to make a special point, because living here during the pandemic has showed me how many children are in this neighborhood. I never realized Virginia Primary School is across the street, or rather around the corner. And I thought the children, I knew that it was children in the neighborhood, but I never realized how many children are literally living in the apartment blocks adjacent to that strip. Not around the corner, not 300 meters away. On that strip, there are children trying to grow up. And so, these are children who have to wake up and go to school in the morning. Not just young people trying to go to work. These are people trying to live their lives and raise families. And I really urge the councillors to acknowledge those images are not one-off events. They're not good weather events. That's our daily reality. And unfortunately, Mr. Pring, I welcome your investment, but realistically, this is the residential neighborhood dealing with a severe problem existing. And we need you to work with the community rather than try to exacerbate a problem that's already out of control. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're at the discussion phase. I've got a lot of points I could make to the applicant. Councillor Rood, first of all, did you have any questions to the objectors or the stage? Councillor Rood, are you with us? Do you have any questions to the objectors?
Sorry, doing the mute thing. No, I think their objections are very clear. Thank you. Okay, so discussion phase. I think you just heard that the main major problem we have here is with the hours, particularly hours during the week. They do seem on the late side. They're clearly, obviously, widely in excess of our SPA hours, but they also, you've just heard the case why during the week it's even more difficult to justify when they can wake neighbours who need to get up for work in the morning. Do you want to reconsider at all any of what you're applying for?
Well, so it's certainly something that we can discuss during the week, as I understand the point that's raised really by Mr. McColdrick and Alexis Verhenes. Can I just say this in response firstly, though, which is that obviously the idea of the Act is to allow flexibility, and longer hours does and should lead to a gradual dispersal. And what we say is that having longer hours per se does not mean necessarily that there will be an addition to cumulative impact issues. What that means is under the way this premises operates and the clientele it seeks to have in, it means people are kept in with a substantial food offer. They might have hired the premises in the basement, etc., but it will lead to a gradual dispersal with the SIA supervisors that are outside according to our dispersal policy. So the fact of longer hours, as you'll know, so with your colleague, is the whole point of the Act, which should bring about a gradual dispersal out of the area. That's what we have in this application, and that's why Guy Hicks says we will not add to the cumulative impact issues. But it's certainly something, sir, that we can discuss. It's a little bit awkward online, but I can certainly discuss it with my clients if you wish us to.
I think we should pursue the discussion for a while longer, but if you then wish an adjournment for a few minutes, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Obviously, I do not fundamentally accept the point you're making. People are attracted into an SPA because there are venues that open late. If those venues did not open late, then they would not come to the area in the first place. In many cases, I would not expect to hang around. So the number of venues you have which licenses clearly are what create the problems that lead us to need an SPA.
That's why, sir, we have a last entry condition. That's why we have a dispersal policy. That's why we're committing to the 4 SIA on the premises, 2 of whom will be outside. All of and the nature of the operation. So the footage you've seen on the video, I will respond to that perhaps if I may, which is just to reiterate the point Councillor Root was getting at. Obviously, it was an open question, but we do query what was happening in the summer months last year. Of course, everyone remembers the 4th of July was the first relaxation for licensed premises, and there was a certain exuberance about the people who attended and wanted to be outside, obviously where there was less sensitivity to COVID concerns, and there was a certain exuberance and disorder issues which arose at that time around the country. The question is actually whether or not that's representative moving forward. And that's what really we would question. But the wider point for the police that we would make is, of course, taking and seeing the footage and everything that we've done to meet the concerns that are raised. There has never been a review of these premises, and there is not, as you sometimes have, and certainly I've been before this committee, with a ream of what's known as CRIS and CAD reports related to these premises, so police incidents related to these premises. That is emphatically not what the police are bringing forward before you. They are providing footage of a number of streets, and nowhere in what they say is that they're saying that this relates to Bar Soho. Their point, I think, is that it is once people leave at later hours, they may be the victim of crime. Well, that is why we have all the measures in place to meet that concern. But certainly, so we'll take instructions on the weekday hours point.
Well, I think the police video was inevitably a snapshot of a particular time, particular incidents, but we've heard evidence from the police and from the local residents that this is a continuous and ongoing problem. And it's not just because of the COVID situation, by that small outburst. It is something that's happening all the time in Shoreditch, which is the very reason you brought in an SPA. Because as you will know, to bring that in, we had to present evidence sufficient not to be challenged.
Yeah, it's
an ongoing need for it.
If I can put it this way, it's the very reason we've got formerly Sergeant Hicks involved here to provide his independent view. And you'll be familiar with him because I think he worked in the area for 7 years as the police licensing sergeant. And having reviewed the nature of the offer and asked for the further conditions which we put in place, he says in paragraph 8, I do not recall a time when Barkick was one of the venues which led to unacceptable levels of crime, violence and disorder. He does refer to the hours at which there are issues in the area, but that's precisely why he seeks the conditions that he does, including the food offer, the last entry, and the SIA. And that's why he's able to conclude that it will not add to the cumulative impact issues in Shoreditch. Of course, we see what's there. Of course, it's a concern for any licensed operator within the area, but that is why we offer what we offer in this case, which brings about a gain in terms of a responsible licensed premises operating in the area.
Councillor Wright, were you asking to come in?
Yes, please. I just wondered if the applicant could respond to the question that the police raised about dispersal from the basement at 1 o'clock. It does seem to me that I can't see how those people can be dispersed out onto the street at 1 o'clock in the morning without adding to the cumulative effect of those crowds that we saw in the video.
Well, I think the important point to make about that is it's the bar that will stop serving at 1 o'clock in the basement, and that the premises may still be open depending on which day it is. So it's not that at 1 o'clock all of the 110 or so that are in the basement have to be turfed out. The premises may still be open. It's the bar that stops serving at 1 o'clock, which should lead to the gradual dispersal. When added to all of the various dispersal policy points, which is about music, which is about lighting, which is about the offer of food, which is about directing people away from the SPA as they leave. And what we envisage, if I can put it that way, you know, the basement is there, not exclusively, but the basement is there to allow corporates and businesses to hire for particular meetings and post meetings and drinks and the like. It's a particular type of clientele which we hope to attract. But by having the 1 o'clock closure for the bar downstairs, we still think that that will lead to a gradual dispersal. In fact, it would help it. We wouldn't have required it if we thought it would have a problem. And if you think it's a problem, don't impose that. But it's there for a reason and is supported, I believe, by Guy Hicks.
Though presumably people could just nip upstairs and get themselves a drink and go downstairs again.
Well, that's something to be regulated by the SIA supervisors that are there. There's 2 inside the premises as well as the bar staff. So it is something that we will monitor with the good reputation that we have for monitoring and having a good reputation for the way we run our premises. I'll just bring in Nick Pring and or Simon Gamble if they want to chip in on that to what I've said.
I think one of the main points here is if there's the last people that can come in is actually at 12:30. There's going to be a gradual disbursement of numbers from the premises anyway, and we're very, one of the things we anticipate is over the course of an hour and a half, all of these people are going to trickle out onto the streets as opposed to all arrive on the streets in one great big number. And that's one of the things that we saw in the video that the police showed. That looked to me like cargo when there'd been an incident inside and a whole load of people being told to go leave and come onto the streets all at the same time outside, and there lieth the problem. So this is what we're trying to prevent.
I just add 2 final points on that. The first is to say that Guy Hicks, what he does acknowledge as an independent expert would, that there is a problematic period which is between 2 and 4 in the morning, particularly at weekends. Please note that, of course, in response to that, we have pulled back the hours during the week to the 1:30 that we're proposing. We would hope people would be dispersed from the premises during the week outside of those times. The other point to make is, of course, the 1 o'clock last sale in the bar area downstairs and the closure of the basement is tied, or at least reflects also the last entry condition. We have the last entry condition as well. The 2 work together to ensure that there won't be the issues that people fear.
Am I confused? Because I thought your client was planning to stay open to 2:30 on Friday and Saturday.
That's Fridays and Saturdays, correct. But
So
I did say during the week.
Well, it's well into the period that he highlights as the worst for the crime and disorder and behavior issues.
Which is why we have the conditions that he's proposed. He still comes to the same conclusion with the conditions that are proposed. So I was focusing that on the week, I should say, which I thought was a particular concern of this panel. So that's why I've said that.
Can I run through some matters of detail, which are not presuming that we're going to grant, but if we were, someone might do. We talked about the capacity before, and you said it's 220 maximum. That's split half between upstairs and downstairs. Would you accept a condition on that?
I will take instructions. The fire risk assessment gives it as 220. As you and your colleague will know, that is under a separate regime anyway. I think I better take instructions on that if I may. I'll keep a running list if I put it that way. So capacity is 1, but also weekday hours is the other.
I was also going to ask if you'd accept, excuse me, I'm getting hoarse. If you'd accept a condition which required you to risk assess the need for door supervisors on other days. So it would not mandate their provision on other days, but would require you to risk assess whether or not they're needed, depending on the event, etc.
If I can be as clear as I can be on that, there is a condition on the license. So if I could draw your attention to page 20.
The current 22 or 23, depending on the version.
22, correct. So there is 22, which male and female SIA door staff to be employed at the premises on a Friday and Saturday from 9 when required on the basis of an operational risk assessment.
What I'm suggesting is removing the reference to Friday and Saturday.
Every day.
But it still would be a risk assessment basis, and it would be the applicant to conclude whether or not they felt they were needed.
Okay, I think given that I am going to take instructions, may I take instructions in one go on these points, Councillor?
Yep, that makes sense.
Thank you.
An easier one, perhaps. if condition 33 about off sales being terminated in the basement, I think it was. So no sales of alcohol consumption. Sorry, the 133 in your bundle. There should be no sales of alcohol consumption off the premises after midnight.
Yes.
We'd want to amend that slightly to state that off sales should only be in sealed containers or bottles.
I'm grateful. I'm sure that would be fine, but I'll take instructions.
And there's also some very strange wording on, I think it was your condition 32. So at the moment it reads, no entry to or re-entry to the premise after midnight by members of the public or guests or friends of members of staff. And that second part refers to guests or friends of members of staff, not members of staff or to friends, but to guests of friends. It's very clumsily worded. It needs to be improved.
Certainly take that point.
It's a very minor point, I realise, in terms of the overall debate.
Yeah.
And then, as was pointed out beforehand, off sales in general Hackney cease at either 11 p.m. or midnight. Generally don't go on beyond that. Penny, are any of those points things you wanted to ask about in detail?
I was interested in asking a bit of detail about the seated spaces that we were talking about earlier on. How much had the seated spaces increased from before? I'm a bit curious I suppose I'm a bit curious to explore this idea about the clientele that you're trying to get. I can see that when you describe them as a sort of more high-class clientele or whatever, you're looking to be charging more money. But, you know, I suppose I'm just a bit skeptical. I'm sort of thinking that basically what you're looking for is people who are coming out of the city, city boys who've got a bit more money and, you know, looking to come in to, you know, so it's not the, you know, gourmet burger is always a burger, isn't it? It's good that there is food available on the premises without people having to go off site, but to describe them as a sort of prestige clientele seems to me a bit over the top, I suppose. And so I'm sort of minded to downplay that a bit, I suppose. I was curious about what the other premises are that the company owns, just for information and potential comparison. I also wondered when we talked about, I'm sorry, I'm just going through a list of questions that I noted here as we were talking earlier on. The investment that had been made in the premises, if some of that investment had been made in noise limitation, and if so, what was it and how much is it? And yes, again, I am just worried about people coming out onto the street at that time of the day. And so to talk in terms of a dispersal plan which pushes people north or east, I don't think is going to make a huge amount of difference, really. I mean, it seems to me that there are people north and east as well as south and west.
Nick, do you want to reply to any of that?
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. Well, in terms of the other sites that we have a restaurant group called the Salt Yard Group of restaurants in and around Soho. We've got, I mean, it is worth mentioning because you were talking about dispersal and so on. We took what's best described as an iconic site called the Paradise in West London, which was 4 years ago. We bought it off the chaps actually that have at the moment the Blues Kitchen and other venues, late night venues in and around Hackney. For one reason or another, they actually had a license review. All the residents were up in arms about the way that it was being done. and we bought it off them. I'm local to there. We sorted it out immediately. I think there's even a letter of support from one of those residents, or one of the main instigators in terms of initiating their review. And the main thing that we did was just basically talk to the residents, and we had a decent dispersal policy. And the dispersal policy was, as you'll all be familiar with in this room, one of the key things that actually made things happen. Prior to us taking the place, there was people, you know, the usual stuff, people being sick and sort of taking taxis and shouting for taxis down narrow side roads. So it was about marshalling, and it was about just running the place responsibly. So, you know, in that regard, we're used to some of the challenges that come with operating a place like this in an area like this, and we feel that we're well equipped. You know, we've got all the tools to do so.
I'm just going to bring in, if I may, just 2 points on that. The first is we've got a letter, an email really, in the bundle, page 31, from Tracy Brent, who is a active member of the Kensal Triangle Residents Association. So Nick Pring has been talking about how they managed to turn around the bar that's known as Paradise from a review situation to something which you'll see on page 31. The Residents Association is very happy to provide a complimentary reference for my client on the basis of how they've turned around Paradise. You'll see that at page 31. Then just 2 other points, if I may. The first is the City Boy attraction, if I can put it in that way. The fact that I refer to corporate bookings is emphatically not about attracting the City Boys in, or exclusively the City Boys in that way. It is about what I would properly call corporate booking, advertising, and all the various options. The point is, it's a pre-booked hire of the premises where we exercise some control for those who are in the basement. And I don't know if Nick can just briefly talk about the basement and how it's set up, but also, so that's one point, Nick, but the other point is on page 27 and 28, Councillor Root was talking about the proportion of tables and chairs in the venue now. I don't know if you can just address that by reference to pages 27 and following.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Well, in terms of the basement setup, the business that we inherited, all they used the basement for, it was just a dumping ground for the various bits and pieces that they had that they weren't using upstairs. So, you know, it's got bookable spaces, and you're quite right, Asitha, to say that it's not just about city bookings that we're looking for. We're looking for people that are getting themselves organised to go out on a Thursday or Friday or a Saturday night and actually go to the effort of making a booking to come in a place. We have a central reservation team in our head office, which is where I am now. We get the details of people when they come in on the Design My Night system. So before they've even walked in the premises, we know all about them. We have the numbers, we have the details, we know where they come from, how many of them there are. So, you know, in many ways, it sort of mitigates any instances or any problems that we might have with those bookings, because we have all of their details. So far as the number of the covers, well, again, you know, I talked about it earlier on when we were talking about how we've always operated our company. There's a very strong food theme running through what we do. Prior to us taking Barkick, I think I'm right in saying that their sales mix was less than 10%. So 10% of their sales is accounted for by food. In the short time that we were open, that went to nearly 30%, which just demonstrates the way that we've repositioned this offer. We fully expect that to probably grow, if it's typical of any of our other places, to go to around 35%. So that by its very nature means that people are sitting down and eating. And, you know, again, that kind of refers to, you know, the premium spend, which we talked about. Those people by nature are not the ones that we see falling out of cargo into Rivington Street in the clip that was shown earlier on.
That's the very reason we have a cumulative impact policy, because every venue argues that. Every venue argues we don't lead to the increase in trouble. And the truth is, someone needs to. It doesn't come out of nowhere. Somebody opens the premises, someone puts money into it.
And that's, if I may say, Councillor, that's why you have a review mechanism under the Act. That's why you have incidents that are recorded. And that's why you have premises who don't help in that regard coming back before you. So none of which applies to Barkick.
And most of all, that's why we have an SPA.
Yes, which is not inflexibly applied as a rule, but as a policy.
It never is, but it's always applied within the context of the premises. But I think we have more than enough evidence that this would add some to the cumulative impact. You might debate how much, but we have more than enough evidence that it would add something to the cumulative impact.
If your view were that it was to add, you would have to come to that having, of course, looked at the presumption and what we put forward to rebut it. And we say there's an actual comprehensive set of conditions here with a good operator that meets it. I know your policy says, as it would do, that this is not about just good operators, but it allows for a discretion on that, which is why we've got urban pubs and bars here to really make that point as clearly as we can.
I'm afraid your presumptions were often a repetition of the same point. I'm afraid they weren't very convincing in that respect.
Could I ask again quickly about the investment and noise reduction and what have you? I mean, we heard a compelling story about how much noise leakage there is from the bar.
Yes, so the condition we have suggested related to a noise limiter for any music being played, but of course does not affect the transmission inside the premises.
Yeah, if I could address you briefly on the conditions first, and then I'll ask Nick Prinn to come in on the investment. You'll have seen, so I'm looking at the applicant's papers from page 20 following. That's where our conditions are. Firstly, can I just note with you condition 13, no noise shall emanate from the premises nor vibration be transmitted through the structure of the premises which gives rise to a nuisance. That condition is there, not limited to music, and it's a condition on the licence currently, and we impose it, we offer it now. Then it's right to note condition 38, if I take them in order. Condition 38, there'll be no DJ-led events, and that's not the nature and style of these premises. But finally, specifically on noise, you'll see, and I hope you haven't missed condition 42 over the page, which is a noise limiter condition, which we offer, and will be set, of course, according to the nearest residential premises. The levels at which that is set will be set by reference to the premises and the point that they're making. So we do offer not just one condition, but 3, plus all the other steps that are in place to deal with those concerns.
But that final one only refers to the PA system, limiting the volume it can play at, does not affect noise generally emanating from the building. Mr. McGoldrick, are you still with us?
Well, it's a musical amplification system.
Yeah.
Which is, amplified music, correct? But
so Mr. McGoldrick, you heard that there's already a condition number 13 on the license, which says there should be no transmission through the building. Is that your experience?
Not so far, and obviously the operating has been sporadic over the last year, but as I gave an example just even last Sunday of when they were transmitting a sports event to people sitting outside, that I could hear that being transmitted through the building fabric. And in terms of other noise issues, I would also note that when the building was being fitted out, a new extract system from the kitchen was put on the flat roof outside of my unit, which increased noise pollution. I spoke to the contractor about that, about putting an acoustic cover around the whole thing, and he was noting that would be too expensive, and so that didn't happen. So we do have some issues there. I also saw a separate planning submission, I think, where the front facade was meant to be completely openable, which of course will not contain the noise as well. So I think the concerns remain.
Okay, so but your evidence to us is that current condition 13 is not achieving what it's meant to achieve.
From my experience, no.
And you could, of course, attempt a review or civil action in that respect.
Noted. Thank you.
I don't know if I can just come back on 2 points on that, just to say, first, I don't want points to be missed. In terms of the seating capacity, I think I'm just taking instructions on that, but I believe it's up to half the capacity sat down, we think. And I'll just look to Nick, Simon, and Peter to confirm that, or if I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, so current seating capacity is 120, because we're not allowed standing at the moment, but that can be increased if need be.
Okay. And then the other point to note in relation to Mr. McColdrick is, of course, we will set the limit of the noise limiter for the amplified sound, whether that's PA or music. It's not been set yet, I understand. Those are the conditions which we're offering through this application.
But what we heard was it's an existing condition on the license, and it's not successfully preventing noise nuisance from reaching Mr. McColdrick.
Which is why that we would hope to work in partnership with Mr. McColdrick to get it right, which is why we've offered a noise limiter.
Yeah, but the noise limiter is limited in what effect it will have. It doesn't affect the transmission through the building, it affects the PA system alone.
Well, I think that does refer to how it's calibrated and how one plays the music, but yes.
I think before we proceed, I would want to give you that chance to adjourn and reconsider the hours in particular and any other issues that I suggested earlier on about having SAA on other occasions based on risk assessment, but in particular the hours. Without prejudging the decision, having heard what I've heard from the objectors, I am very loath to grant late hours during the week, given what I've heard. So it's up to you to consider your position, but I think it would be wise if you did consider reducing those a bit. So with that, I'll adjourn to 3:20 if you would like to get in contact and make some form of decision between you.
Thank you.
Okay, so break to 3:20.
Sorry, apologies. Yeah.
I think that's everybody. Do you have any proposals to put to us?
So yes, I'm grateful for the time. If I could just run through these, I think in the order in which they were raised. The first is capacity. In terms of capacity, we would be prepared to comply, of course, with the fire risk assessment, which currently puts it at 220. In terms of how that would be reflected on a license, we would say that we would be tied to the fire risk assessment figure, because of course the fire risk assessment figure is what is currently assessed and can change. And so we would resist really a figure on as a condition, but we would say we are happy to keep to the capacity that is fire risk assessed, which on the record is currently 220. The reason for that, if I can just say, is that during the day, it may be that a different configuration within the premises could allow a greater capacity, which is still fire risk compliant. And so we wouldn't want to be tied in a condition to a particular number, but we would want to have, we would be prepared fully to say that we would comply with the fire risk assessment figure. So that's the first point. The second point was on weekday hours. Having regard to everything that's said, I do want it to be absolutely clear this is a partnership approach and we do listen. We are prepared to cut back the hours on weekdays, by which I mean Monday to Thursday, to those which are on the existing license in terms of midnight, but midnight plus a 30-minute dispersal. So currently for the supply of alcohol and other entertainment, regulated entertainment, it's midnight. We would need the extra half an hour after that in terms of opening during the week days, Monday to Thursday. Can I say that the way, I mean, it's a difficult discussion we've had to have on that. The quid pro quo for that really is that we still seek our hours for Friday and Saturday. This is a new license, and the conditions that we're offering are restraints on the business, and they cost money and detract from the investment. And there needs to be a balance in all of this. We are prepared, having heard what residents have to say, to cut back those weekday hours, but at the same time, we do still seek the weekend hours. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. And I say that that is a proportionate approach. Then on the other points, the risk assessment on days other than, for SIA supervisors on days other than Friday to Saturday, absolutely happy to do that. Then in terms of alcohol off the premises only in sealed containers and bottles, absolutely happy to do that. In terms of tweaking condition 32 on its wording as to guests of friends of staff, yes, we can certainly be clear about that. It should simply be guests of staff. It doesn't need to be both. And off sales, finally, can stop at 11 o'clock or midnight according to the weekday or weekend. We're happy to agree with that.
Okay, thank you. And I genuinely appreciate that those were some meaningful moves and that they are affecting trade.
I don't know, so if I can just raise one other point, because I've taken instructions on it. On this noise limiter, I just want to be as precise as we can on that. What that will mean, compliance with that condition, what that will mean is that a noise receptor is calibrated within the resident's flat. And it does mean that if there is a concern about vibration or music or noise, we will have to set the limiter accordingly. Now, if that means that we have to carry out further works of noise attenuation to comply, then we'll have to do that. But that is all things that we commit to through the condition.
I think the noise limiter is a partial red herring in that it's not the noise coming from the PA system that's the only concern. It's the noise that otherwise just coming through the fabric of the building that the code was worried about. However, again, I think that you've gone as far as you need to with that, and condition 13 will stay in force under any version of this.
We will be subject to a review if there's a problem with condition 13.
Yeah. I'm going to ask the parties now if they would like to comment on the revised matters. Mr. Chu, do you want to make any remarks first?
I don't think I've got much to add, Chair. I guess the revisions to the application are of course welcome. They reduce some of the activity, the proposed activity during the week, which there are concerns about. So as I say, that's welcome. We do still have those concerns, of course, at the weekend, and with the hours of activity being proposed right into those most the times, I guess, when we see the most of the stress in that area, especially, as I say, at the weekend. So I guess those concerns do remain, but it's kind of countered with reductions in.
But you are maintaining your objection.
I am maintaining the representation, Chair. Still not clear on the plans as well, also, which is something I put in my original representation.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know, Councillors.
I'm going to take a slight roundup of the two authorities first, and then I will let you come back.
Okay.
So, PC Ryan, do you want to comment?
Yes, I mean, it's still proceeding with the weekend hours. Does mean that there will be a obviously influx of people on the streets during the busiest time. And we've also heard now that the basement that wasn't previously used and was used as dumping ground or storage is now going to be used, which is now an increase in capacity and an increase in people that will be drinking and put out on the streets effectively.
I think that's an important point. We hadn't really fully understood that necessarily. So Tonga, I'd like you to come back now if you wish.
I'm grateful. Just on that last point, of course, the current licence has no capacity constraint, and so the numbers would not have been limited previously. And notwithstanding any of that, of course, there were no issues identified which led to a review, nothing which Guy Hicks can remember leading to a significant concern relating to the premises. So that's just on that point. With regards to the plans, just to come back on that point, yes, the internal plans, which is page 34 of the council's bundle, do cover the whole area, and we can fully see that there are other areas of storage and others which wouldn't ordinarily be the licensed areas. If that really is a concern, I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, but we're quite happy, I think, for the license to the red line not to cover those areas, but really it's a flexibility point. We want it there for the licensed premises. It's not, of course, it's not expected to be having customers in the areas which are not for the public.
I think Mr. Stewart's point was specific to the fact that it covers an area of pavement.
Yes.
And also it covers that communal corridor within the building, which is not in the sole use of the applicant. Those are particular bits you want excluded from the area quite clearly.
Yes, I think the area in the front is to allow for the smoking area, and of course during the day, for example. I don't know if I can just refer you to page 19 of our bundle. Page 19 of our bundle. Page numbers top right, and you'll see there
the red area. Yeah.
The red area, which is the broad area for the location of smoking. I know that Simon Gamble's still on this call. It's not envisaged the whole of that area will be for smoking, but we want the flexibility to have it within either or, and there'll be also queuing within that area. Is that right?
Yeah, so we will have obviously the security outside or management to police. I think we agreed up to 11 guests outside at the maximum for smoking. Yeah. And then if there is a queue, then we'll allocate a smoking area and a queuing. Just to clear up with the outside, the residential area or communal area, that's just because that's access for a fire escape, an internal fire escape, which we also use to access the venue out of hours.
Okay, but I think we can resolve Mr. Stewart's concerns on that one at least. I hope.
So, Chair, do you want me to come back on that? Yeah.
If you wish to.
Just looking at the proposed plan submitted with the application, it just, to me, it suggests where the red line is. Those are the areas where licensable activity will be carried out. So things like smoking.
Smoking is not a licensable activity.
Exactly. Smoking isn't, and staff circulation, those sorts of activities aren't licensable. So if you are minded to grant, what we could do is just require a submission of a revised plan where the red line is repositioned to the extent of the boundary.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, PC Ryan, did you have anything else to say?
Yes, is there any time constraints on the use of the outdoor area, if there's going to be any seating out there or drinking out there? Obviously, we wouldn't want people out there until early hours of the morning.
My understanding is it's not proposed for as a seating or drinking area. In fact, we're prohibiting drinks to be taken outside after a certain time. It's only smokers.
So I don't know if I can draw your attention to condition 39. Condition 39 on page 22. Condition 39 on page 22.
Yeah.
Refers to the smoking area, and then it says after 10 p.m. the smoking area will have no more than 11 persons outside. After 10 o'clock, patrons cannot take glasses or open containers outside the front of the premises to the smoking area. So
my apologies.
That's how the smoking area is dealt with. It's fair to say, and I need to be clear about this, there's of course pavement licensing is something that I hope the committee will be familiar with during the COVID period, and it's envisaged for that temporary period. That's a separate matter, and I do believe we have a pavement license, but that's not really within the remit of this application. It's a separate matter, which is a separate process.
Yes, indeed it is. Alexis, do you want to comment on what you've heard?
Thank you, Chair. Frankly, they speak of a partnership, but I find it insulting because they maintain they want longer hours during the weekdays, half an hour instead of longer hours. They want to maintain the longer hours on the weekday, more capacity during the weekdays, more capacity during the weekends. So if more use of outdoor space during longer hours. So I don't understand what there is a pattern of venues and making applications and asking for outrageous things and then decreasing them to sort of somehow come out and be seen as I'm giving the residents or giving the council these concessions, when actually the original request was outrageous and they're still getting incredible concessions with their reduced demands. So I still maintain strongly my objection. Thank you.
Mr. McGoldrick. Frank, you still with us? Hello?
I think he's gone.
Yeah, I can't see him anymore. Anyway, Councillor Root, any other questions or points from you?
No, I don't think so. No, I think we've heard sufficiently.
I think where I'm coming from, to give you a chance to comment in your last remarks, is at the moment this seems to be quite a substantial breach of our special policy area, and would be an additional cumulative impact that, to my mind, is not acceptable. That's why I'm coming around to having heard from everyone. I'm saying that that's my final decision, but to give you a chance to rebut it if you wish.
Thank you, sir.
So can I just, sorry, just before we go on, perhaps I could just add to that I suppose I'm sort of similarly minded, and my biggest concern really, I suppose, is just that extra influx of people onto the street. I take absolutely what you said about the report, which shows that there's no particular problems inside the venue. But I think it's that influx onto the street at that time which is already problematic, which I think would go against our policy if we granted it.
Thank you. So I think just to deal with that, if I may, it's for us to rebut the presumption. Obviously, that's the presumption in your license, in your policy. But your policy is and makes clear it's each case on its merits, and on a new premises application, you have to bear in mind, would be my respectful submission, the availability of review if this does not come to pass. The status quo, if you like, is a license that we have and has operated without problem. No one, the police is not saying that it's bar kick customers that have been a concern. The police have not said here are the incidents related to the way in which bar kick has operated and incidents involving victims of crime from bar kick. That is the evidential position. It's not unusual for this committee to hear at any application the police objecting with their evidence as to specific incidents related to these premises. Now, it's fair to say, and it's rightly noted by the chair, that that's the essence of an SPA, is its general concerns about the issues. Well, all of those points I raised at the outset about the type of operation and clientele and the steps are there to rebut the presumption. But critically in all of this, it is the cutback in hours that we offer, in response to what's being raised. And we've stripped it back really as far as we can in terms of balancing out the concerns raised by residents. Let's just pause, and we must always pause and look at who has objected. I think there's 5 representations, 2 of whom have turned up and spoken. We don't take those lightly, but you also have to look at these premises and where they are, and the type of character of the area and how it seeks to attract a diverse range of licensed premises, which this fits within. So I think key to it in my submission would be the availability of a review. If Mr. McGoldrick has a problem with the condition, we will be back here and you can cut back. And if there are concerns and issues raised by us operating on the Friday and Saturday as we propose with the conditions that we have, we will be back here. But the way the Act works, whether it's within the SPA or without the SPA, is essentially permissive. It should allow for good operators to demonstrate, as we have done, I submit, through the conditions, that we will not add. Now, important in that, noting what the police have said, important in that is what Guy Hicks says. And I just urge you, councillors, to have another look at what he says. Yes, he identifies an issue for particular hours, and that's why we've cut back the hours during the week. But he doesn't just focus his concerns about what happens inside the premises. There's a range of measures: last entry, the availability of food, the dispersal policy, the number of SIA supervisors outside, which we commit to, which is 4, 2 of whom will be outside, which seek to regulate, and he says will not add to premises which have never been a problem within the SPA with extended hours as they are currently. Now, the last point I'll just mention is in terms of additional capacity. I would resist that as a way of describing what this is, because what we say is premises always had no capacity limit. All that we're saying is that we're bringing into use the basement in a way it wasn't used. It was available for use, but it doesn't seem to have been used by the premises. That is not adding additional capacity. And in terms of what we've done, there's been a proper fire risk assessment. We commit to those numbers. We regulate our basement, which is not drink-led in the way that you might have in an upright drinking premises. It's to do with table football, corporate events, and food. And that's a different nature of premises, all of which, when you consider in the round, I do submit provides an application which you can grant. Now, it's right to note what you get from that is gains in terms of regulation of the area outside, SIA supervisors, last entry, and so forth. If we don't get this, firstly, there's real concerns about the investment we've put in and what we need to, how we need to operate moving forward. But secondly, we move back to a license which is less regulated. Yes, it has more restricted hours, but you don't get the gains which will. And that's really how we put this license as application, is really seeking to meet the balance. And slavish adherence to the SPA is not what your policy is about. This is fully consistent with your SPA. If you allow us to rebut the presumption, as we say we will do and have demonstrated we can do, on a new premises license application. So I'll just take instructions, if I may, if there's anything else, but otherwise those are my points in summation.
Okay, give you a minute or so.
Thank you.
In the meantime, everyone else could please think about their closing remarks.
Sorry, sir, I had assumed, perhaps wrongly, that the applicant, because it's the applicant that's applying for the license, would have the final word. I thought that's the way this would work, but
no, I'm pretty sure I stated at the start I would kick people in the same order as their initial remarks.
Right. So,
but to be clear, if anyone raises anything new or anything that has not been covered before, I would A, stop them, and B, give you a chance to comment further.
I'm grateful.
Do you have anything you want to
I
add?
have nothing further. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, Mr. Stewart, do you want to make your final remarks?
Not much further to add at this stage, Chair. Just to reiterate really what I've said, welcome the additional submission received and the revisions to the application and what we've heard from the applicant. However, I still do have those concerns that the proposed additional activity, and I'll be clear, it's the proposed additional activity over and above what's already authorised by the existing licence that I have concerns about. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just take from the police and then Councillor Wood will come back to you. PC Ryan.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to reiterate that police believe that the granting of this application with the longer hours would have an impact on the cumulative effect. Bar kick may not have previously been specifically named as a bar in relation to the problems, but police are moreover concerned with the prevention of crime and disorder as a licensing objective. And there is a review process that's available to us, but police would rather it didn't get to that stage, because to bring a review means there's been serious crime, and that often relates to someone being harmed or seriously injured. So we wouldn't want to bring them back as to the review process. And the longer hours will see an increase in the amount of alcohol consumed, which in my experience of Shoreditch late at night leads to the increase in crime and disorder on the streets. At present, we haven't seen anything that's going to allay our concern, so we will maintain our objections. Thank you very much.
Thank you, that's very clear. Alexis, do you make final remarks?
Thank you, Chair. I would just ask the councillors to remember that this is, as well as an area of nightlife, an area that is residential in nature. It's one of the most densely populated parts of our city. As a resident and as a patron of Barkick, I welcome investment, but I would like it to be respectful of the fact that this is still also a residential neighbourhood. Thank you.
Mr. Antonga, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Just on the legal point raised by the police, it's not right to say, and you'll obviously take advice from Ms. North, it's not right to say that a review can only be brought by the police on the basis of serious crime. Summary reviews are based on serious crime associated with premises. A standard review under section 51 can be brought on any evidence which shows that the prevention of crime and disorder has been undermined. It can be brought by any resident, single or otherwise, and any responsible authority on that lower threshold.
Yeah, I think we understand that. However, what point you're making is that it is difficult to bring any type of review for any party. It involves considerable effort to massively documentation and proof, etc. Councillor Wright, any final clarification from any party?
I just wondered on the last point about the fact that this new licence would, whilst it does have extended hours, also include various checks and balances, which the old licence doesn't have. Whether that, I wondered what Mr. Stewart's thoughts were about that, really, whether those checks and balances were sufficiently significant to merit us giving it serious consideration, even despite those extra hours.
Mr. Stewart?
Well, certainly, Councillor, serious consideration can be given to the application. There's no doubt about that. I just think, though, that the proposed activity, again, just goes straight into those hours of the day where we see the most problems, or the police see the most issues. You know, and it's also referred to or alluded to in the additional submission in the statement from Mr. Hicks. So although this new application, you know, does introduce new conditions, and can see that the applicants made an investment into the site, we're still ultimately in a situation where there are more people on the street in the hours where we have the most problems.
Okay, I guess my comment would be that it also, some of those checks and balances which may benefit from some of the local residents are things which the licensee could always look to include in the old license at some point if they want to work in partnership with their neighbours. We don't
of
have
course,
to.
there's nothing to stop the operator opening under the current license, operating under those hours for a period, and then coming back for further amendments.
Okay, thank you.
Amanda, do you think there's anything we should have asked about that we haven't asked about?
No, I think you've covered everything.
With that, thank you all for your attendance today. As I said at the start, we'll try and reach a decision either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and we'll try and tidy it up, put it in writing to you all within 5 working days. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye for the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.